Hi guys, just before getting started, I ran out of music. I'll probably run out of time as well. We'll start in just 1 minute. I'm Finn out of Copenhagen. I'm going to do this webinar for just about 1 hour. 1 hour is not very long, but I'll try to do my best to cover the things that I think is the most important about a successful year-end close, period close. Year-end close is just kind of period close on steroids. Now, if you got any questions, please drop a note in the chat today with me. I got Alison and Henny. They'll take care of the moderation as we go. And at the end of this hour, I'll try to have 10 or 15 minutes set aside for answers, if possible, for some of your questions. It's really good to see such a huge crowd today in here. Really good. It is an important topic, and you don't do at least the year-end close too often, and always a lot of things happening. And I think this time as well. So let's just get started. Once again, please drop notes, questions in the chat. And when we get to the end of the webinar, I'll try to answer those if Alison or Henny has not taken care of it already. Thanks for being here. Let's get started. I'll start rolling the slides. That's the most important things. And once in a while, I will too share my live Dynamics 365 as well. So what was the promise of this webinar in here when you signed up for this? Best practice, well, practice at least from a lot of projects and training deliveries that I've been doing over the last many years working with Dynamics 365. Before that, AX, Acceptor, Concord Excel, and other ERP systems for about 40 years or so. Good fun, year-end close, hard work, a lot of things that you have to do, whether being in general ledger, in accounts payable, in accounts receivable, cash bank management, and fixed assets, the modules that I've chosen to cover today. Other ones could be done, and I will just mention briefly that, of course, you need to do things in project management and accounting, project operations if you prefer, and also in inventory. It could be other places too, but I'll focus on the primary financial modules which we have on the screen right now. Now, moving on to some of the topics that I have mentioned we are going to do, then you can see that the financial period close workspace is up here at the front, and that's a very typical me. If you join some of my other webinars, I've been with some of my training, you would know that the financial period close workspace is something that I really push and push hard. A lot of people haven't seen it, haven't worked with it, or perhaps worked with it and don't appreciate it too much. But I'll use that kind of as a springboard today for presenting some of the things that we're going to do. Whether you're going to use it or not is totally up to you. But I use it, and I use it a lot. And on any projects I'm on, I push it very hard. So please bear with me. This is one of my favorite things in Dynamics 365. It's not perfect, not much is, but if you benefit from it, why wouldn't you want to use it? Then we'll have a look at some of the other things as well, of course, as part of going through these topics, the bank reconciliations, foreign currency revaluation. Well, I would like to share some of the very important new things that will happen with the next version coming out. I can't show you, it's not in public release yet, it's in public preview, not allowed to show you, but I'll tell you, we can read more about it. I just did a blog post about it, maybe you saw it on LinkedIn. But there's some new things, finally, about a posting profile for foreign currency revaluation. It gives me the hope we're going to have more posting profiles soon. Then to the calendars, the fiscal calendar and the ledger calendar, very important when we do the period and the year-end close as well. And not sure, not too much perhaps, on consolidations, eliminations, and fiscal reports. A lot of you don't do consolidation eliminations in Dynamics 365, don't do financial reports. Let's see how much time I have at the end. So right now, just got started in here, and I think I mentioned something about that I will share the screen once in a while with my camera, but basically I will leave the camera off and then leave you to see the presentation and the live Dynamics 365 as well. So let's just get to the real topics in here. When you get to the year end or any other kind of closing you're going to do, there is really an endless task list of that. And this one, I sort of scraped from the consultant demo data, the standard demo data that we have from the financial period close. And it's actually a good starting point. Most things are in there, if not all. You might want to have some more things. You might got some other modules as well. That's absolutely fine. But the thing is, with the demo data, these were created a while ago. So it missed a few things, maybe some of the things you'd like to add, at least some of the things I'd like to add. And I'll use this, the financial period close, ignore the name, but the financial period close workspace and the task list in there to get through this year-end process, the period processes as well. And I'd also like to see some of the new things that has happened will happen. It's just around the corner. Like I mentioned to you, this currency revaluation posting profile, which is really, really nice and something we've been asking for years, I think. There's some things that is not on the task list on the financial period close is the currency revaluation possible in cash and bank management. That was added, as some of you would know, some time ago. First, there was an option, you could switch it on in the parameters, and there was a feature in feature management, which is now mandatory. So basically now we have currency revaluation, cash and bank management. But that didn't exist when the demo data guys created the task list, the template and the schedule of the things, as we will see in the financial period close workspace. So I would add, definitely, if I did this, I'll add this currency revaluation under cash and bank management under the task list for that. And also, credit management is a fairly new module, at least the functionality, the very much extended functionality about credit limit calculations and so on is added too. So if I sort of were doing the end of year processing, I would have a look at my customers' credit limits and maybe use some of the automatic calculations of the credit limits. I would for sure add this to my task list under my year-end close. And then we have the brilliant functionality about revenue recognition. I think every time I attended Microsoft conferences for 10 years or whatever, somebody would mention, when are we going to have true revenue recognition? And when it came around, I wouldn't say it was worth the wait because we waited for so long, but it's really, really good. It's newer than the demo data. So this I would add to the task list as well, just like we have, as we'll come back to, we got the things about doing the, okay, don't forget to post the journals, don't forget to settle the invoices, don't forget to do the recalculation, collection letters and other things too. Revenue recognition we have to do again. Revenue recognition on sales orders, we can then skew, kind of like the accruals thing. You can spread over periodization and have some schedules to recognize the revenue, but you have to think about every period end, and then also very important at year end too. So that is not on the endless task, so it did have an end after all. Some of the new things are not in the revenue recognition was one of them. And then since the financial period close workspace, the template that we have in the demo data is for a period, not for a year, we will then need to add things like the purchase order year end. This is kind of purely financial. I'm not going to do too much about purchase orders. Just want to mention that. We'll have a look at closing period adjustments that we do in the closing sheet. Very old-fashioned tool, but still the one to use. And then the year-end close, where we got a bit of extra functionality with the templates helping us somewhat when we got multiple legal entities. So let's just have a look at the very first tip I got and the greatest of them all. So in this, I have the financial period close. I know the name, some of the finality and the other things too is not necessarily perfect, but I really think this beats any task list you could have. I've seen a lot of task lists being done in other tools, in Excel spreadsheet, in notepads, whatever you'd like to. But the benefit of having it inside Dynamics 365 is there's so many things that you can make use of users, of the status and other things too. So this is not the only thing I'm going to do, but this is a good place to start. So I'll have a look at this. This is just a snapshot, a screenshot. So this is not live. I'm going to switch to the live soon. You can see, if you haven't seen the workspace before, let me just deconfuse it a little bit. This is a list of tasks that you would have to do for a period. The period with the demo data right now is in March 2017. And then with the tasks, I can then see I should do what we would normally do when we do a period end, to do currency revaluation, to post the journals, and then get to general ledger and to stop the period. And the beauty of all this is you can set up dependencies and other things too. So not being perfect, and I'll come back to that, this is, if nothing else, a good reminder for me of things that I have to mention to you guys today when we're talking about the year-end closing procedures. Because most of the things I mentioned in here, we do the same things. If it's period close or year-end close, then I just have to add a few new things and a few old things from general ledger as well. So this is really good. I think you could use other tools as well, but if for nothing else, just to remind yourself if you got all the various topics in here on the checklist. So I know I'll mention it at all times if anybody cares, and even if they don't care, but I really think this is a good tool. The worst thing is the name. To me, I really think, because you could use it for a lot of other things which I demonstrate when we do training and so on. Why not use it for warehouse, not use it for production? When we're going to do period ends, like counting journals and doing something about inventory close, why not use that? Well, it's called financial. It doesn't matter, because we could use it for a task list, basically. So ignore the name, use the functionality, not being perfect. I think it's good. So let's just move on and see how we set this up and use. First of all, the use of that. It's a task list and it's on steroids. It's built on a template with relative days. So basically, you would have that template and you would not say it's going to be happen on the 28th of April. It will happen 2 days before the period end. If that happens to be the period of April, then you would also have to look into calendars to calculate when it's actually going to be done. We have a status control, so you can see if your people in the team, they've actually done the things, if they're late and so on. It works across multiple legal entities if you want to. You can link to a task on the Dynamics 365 menu. So when people are going to work with this, they could just click and it takes you there. And then an often question is then, if I've been navigating over there, and does it automatically check that I've done the things? No, because one thing is navigation, another thing is you actually did it. So you have to confirm, yes, I actually did that. And then there are some dependencies, like you certainly don't want to stop the period unless you've done the posting of the journals, and then unless you've done the currency revaluation and so on. Then you can set up dependencies which would prevent you from doing that before you have done this. Then we've got the things about the calendar and the holidays, not the finest hour of this tool, unfortunately, but it's in there. And then we can do things about attachment, pre and post task completion. Now, the pre and post task completion, that's my terminology. It's not the Microsoft terminology. But what I mean by that is that you can attach to a task in the template. It could be maybe a document that describes how things are going to be done, supposedly. And then when the user actually does the things like counting the inventory and writes off a few pints of beer or whatever is going to happen, then they could add a post-task attachment to that. So see, this is what I actually did, boss. I know what you told me to do. This is what I did in here. You can keep track of that afterwards too. So a lot of good things in there, and some of the things, as always, could be better. I'll come back to that because, you know, we got the ideas portal, and actually once in a while, things happen as we'd like them to from the ideas portal. And one of the things I'm going to mention today about the currency revaluation posting profile was actually from the ideas portal and was carried out. So there's still hope for some of the things that we would like to do. Right. This is a task list. It's on steroids, and I'd like to show you a little bit about how it actually works in here. This is what it looks like when I just took a snap. Then I'll have a look at how we actually configure this. First, a bit on the PowerPoint presentation, then I'll do it live. The building blocks basically starts from the bottom. I mentioned I don't think this tool is perfect, and it is a little bit confusing when you start working with it the first time around, when you have a look on the actual dashboard, when you navigate to the configuration of the financial period close, you have a look at that. I think this screen in here should be split because it's part configuration, it's part operational. The thing at the top is closing schedule. That's operational. That's what we're going to do. That's the task that I showed you. And then the other things here that leads to the creation of the closing schedule. So to me, the closing schedule should be in a separate screen because it's not really configuration. It's just sort of pushing it out. And then the templates, and before that, the calendars, and the real building blocks, the task areas, the resources, and the closing roles. Those are the ones which are part of this configuration in here. But that aside, this is where you do the configuration, except for the closing schedule. This is where you apply the things that you've been doing, like on a period-to-period basis. Now, that's all fine, but let me just highlight the things that I think it is. The operational thing is the closing schedule. This is where you do a mix of the template and the calendar and a few other selections. So you actually got the list of the tasks in the demo data for March 2017 or whatever you've been doing in here. And then the things about the templates, the calendars, that's a required setup configuration in order to make it operational. This is not the biggest thing in here. Now, the closing roles in here is basically just a description of things. You give it a name and you apply a description. And no, it's got nothing to do with the security roles or any other things. It's a new thing, which is only over here. The task areas, it's not module names. It looks like that in the demo data. And I do understand why they did it in the demo data. However, it is confusing when the grouping names in here are called the same thing as the modules, because then if you just have a look at it, it looks like the module names, but it isn't. It's your grouping name. So if you could have one called WH or warehouse or stock or whatever you'd like to, you give it a name. It's just for use a little bit later on. Now we're getting closer to things that we know of already, the employees, the employee names in here. And then you can see we look back at the things about the closing role. And that's why when I do the configuration of this, I sort of start from the bottom, just like real life, and then I work my way up from the things about the closing roles and going through the various task areas. Then I get to the resources up here, and then I move up the ladder a little bit. So when you select the employees to carry out things to fill the closing role, what's the assignment of that? You tell them, okay, Finn, the employee Finn, could view his tasks or everybody's task. I really like to have a group feature in here, or team leader feature, or whatever, but there's only all on my own ones. That could be better, but that's what it is. And then from the closing roles, I then assign that I got a closing role like a controller or an AP journal poster or whatever it would be, and I've got that in the company or the companies. Well, it's companies in here, as many as I'd like to. So I could be the controller of Denmark, Germany, Netherlands, Florida. So I had to travel to sunny Florida once in a while. The calendars. You know, we've got so many different calendars in Dynamics 365. Hey, here we've got another one. That's really too bad. So we create calendars in here to define the work days, and there's no connection to any other Dynamics 365 calendars. There's no holiday import. Enough said about that. And then you set up the templates. The templates, I got an example of that right now, is basically a lot of, oops, my animation not working perfectly fine. But anyway, this is where I define what is supposed to happen. What kind of tasks do we have at a month end? Not which month end, not end of March, end of February, or what it is. That's where we do the scheduling, right? The template is where you organize in which task area. My definition, not the ones given by module names, but the ones I create in here, where I mentioned that this is not module names. You call it whatever you like to. So the accounts receivable you see right now on my shared slide, that's a name somebody created in the financial period close configuration of that. Then the task is a name I give it, and I could then link it on the right-hand side. I can then link it to a menu item inside Dynamics 365, or it could be a URL, which we use like when we do financial reports. You define this by a URL. We can't link to those from a menu, so we could use the URL of that. And then between that, you can then see when it's going to happen, due date relative to. This could be positive or negative number. And what it's being used for is when I schedule this, I define a period from and to, as we'll see soon. And then from the period to, we sort of calculate backwards or forwards, depending on what we got the due date relative. So if we wanted a couple of days before the month end or whatever, these due date relative to is calculated from the scheduling's period end, as I selected here. Quite often this is like a financial period, but doesn't have to be. I key it in manually. And I guess that was a hard decision from Microsoft, whether we're going to link to the periods in our fiscal calendars or not, but you key it in manually. That's the decision in here. Then you select the closing role, and please note, it's a closing role. It is not an employee. What was it? We created a closing role, and then we set up the employees. We defined which employee would cover this closing role in which legal entity. So this one line in here, the first one with the finalized period billing with the AR invoicing clerk, it could be 5 or 6 different people, depending on how many companies I have in here. So I don't have to define it for each legal entity. I just define, or company, sorry, as I call it in here. I just define which ones, and then with a schedule, I will have at least 4. It looks like it's going to have 5 lines in it because there are 3 dots in here. So it'll be 1 line for each of the various companies in it. That could be the same person, could be different persons, depending on who's been assigned to do the closing role, to fulfill the closing role in which legal entities in here. There's more on the menu. I could set up if there is a dependency for the first task. I can not on the template. The first task could not have a dependency because it is the first one. And then only when you do the next ones, you could set up dependencies if you'd like to. And then we could do the pre-task attachment. And then later on, we could, once we actually do the task, carry it out, we could do the post-task attachments in here. Scheduling is this. I've done all the configurations, set up, things are done. Now I'm ready for January 23, February 23, or whatever it is. So I'll give it a name, the closing schedule in here. I'll give it a name, create a new one, and give it a name. And then I will select in some sort of sequence in here. I will then select the period start and end. And that was the period end date that does the calculation of these relative days in here. I would select the template, which has a list of my tasks. And then I would select companies. And when you select the companies in here, I can't select companies yet because it actually is kind of clever. It is. It looks into which companies are mentioned on the template. So I won't be able to select the companies until I have told which template it would be. And then, and only then, I will then be able to select between the companies over. And then you might think, why do you want to select between the companies? Why don't you just select them all? That's a calendar thing. Because they might have many companies in there and they don't have the same kind of holidays. Right now in my country, we have some discussion about holidays, and in other countries, they've got some other holidays as well. So you might want to schedule 3 or 4 times with the same template, but with different calendars due to the different holidays that you've actually got. Now, time flies. Let's just have a look at this real life. So let me just switch to my Dynamics 365. And I think I'm just going to drag it over here and share this like this. And this is the latest public version, 10.31. Can't show you some of the things about the next topic, currency revaluation, that's so, but about those. And then strongly encourage you to have a look at the small video that Mohammed Amar shared on LinkedIn the other day. It's also on YouTube, actually. On that. Just going to give you a heads up. But first thing first, one of my, I know, favorites. I don't use it much, but it is one of my favorites, the financial period close. Let's just have a look at that. This is just about as new as I could get this environment in here. I rolled out. I didn't do too much changes. I mentioned AXcademy here and there once in a while. For those of you who haven't been working with the latest Workspace updates, they are now vertical instead of horizontal tabs, aligned with the user interface recommendation from Microsoft. We have got, ta-da, we got the tiles up here now being in different sizes, 2x2, 2x4, like these ones. And you could, if you want to, you can then personalize these ones and then do the changes of that, just like when you build a new. But that's not the interesting thing in here, but I just want you to know. What have I done in here? What have the Demolator guys done? They've done one scheduling of a financial period close in here. So they rolled out a template. They applied the selection of the from and to dates and companies and calendar, and then I got a task list of things to do. That's what this March 2017 is. That's a collection of tasks according to the scheduling that happened, which we'll have a look at soon. And then when I get into my workspace, depending on who I am, I mentioned briefly that you could set up your employees, the resources, set them up to view their own tasks only or all tasks. Once again, I miss the group team thing dearly, but it's not in there. So now you can see what's in March 2017. And since I am set up to be able to see everything in here, at least, I can see everybody's tasks. So whether it's per company, per area, per person, or the full Monty in here, at least of the not yet completed things, then I see it in here. Please note, the list you see in here is about the not completed things. But if you want to see the people actually work at a time, you could just switch on to see the completed tasks as well. And that's sort of where I started today when I had my presentation with all the things in here that you have to do this in the various areas. Think modules, right? But these are names that I gave myself. So I switched this on and they could see I've got these lists and hey, I think there's something missing. And I came back down to bank. You can see in bank, there's nothing about the currency revaluation. It should be, but this was created obviously before the currency revaluation was added to the cash and bank module. And there are other things too in here with the, I mentioned to you, the revenue recognition in its own module. If you want to call an area revenue recognition or not, that's of course totally up to you. And then the things about the credit things. There's been so much functionality added with the credit and collections module, all in its own module these days, and a vast number of features being added over the last couple of years, including automatic collection letters and so on. Wonderful functionality. But it's not in here because it was kind of new. So it's a good starting point, but it's not perfect. And then also please remember, for a period, this is not for a year. So we have to get back to the slides, unfortunately, and have a look at these again. And then I'll show you some of the new functionality that was missing in here. At least tell you about it, because I can't show you, it's not public yet. I'll tell you about this wonderful thing, currency revaluation posting profile, and why I really think it's a wonderful thing. When I think that this is wonderful, it's normally because I had a lot of customers asking about it and making their point. Why was this not in Dynamics 365? It's in your competitor's system. Oh dear, now it's in here. So you saw some of the things about the tool setup, and already spent some time on that. Might come back to doing some of the configuration of the financial period close, the workspace, but let's just do some of the other things in here as well. The foreign currency revaluation. Being from a small country, we have to do a lot of things about foreign currency. A lot of our customers, they do. Got so many legal entities, they all do foreign currency. So foreign currency revaluation is a big thing with most of our customers. And where can we do that in Dynamics 365 and how? In accounts payable, we could do foreign currency revaluation with simulation, come back to that. The same thing with accounts receivable, very, very similar. The way that we actually do it in accounts payable and accounts receivable, doing the simulation, and then afterwards doing the real thing. Basically, rerun it. Time consuming, really. So in cash and bank management, as in general ledger, we have preview. And the difference between preview and simulation is that if you're happy about the preview, you just say, that's it, let's go with that. You don't run it again. You basically just post a preview. One of the things you could argue about if previews should be the default value, so you don't by mistake, at least the first time, because then you learn the lesson, you don't by mistake, you post immediately on that. But I really like the idea about the preview, not so much if it's not the default value, however. With simulation, you can get the preview kind of in the simulation, but you have to rerun the whole thing again. And it is time consuming to do this if you have a substantial number of legal entities, a substantial number of these transactions being calculated. What are these transactions? These transactions are all temporary foreign currency revaluation transaction. The real thing that happened, realized gain and loss, that happens automatically when you settle a transaction, but the unrealized ones are the ones we do this foreign currency revaluation for. Now, with the functionality we have as of today, being this version I have right now is 10.031, we can only do very little about controlling where these 4 transaction types are going to be posted. We've got some default accounts as can be defined by transaction type, unrealized gain and loss, and realized gain and loss. 4 different transaction types. You can define those in the overall important screen called ledger. Now, if you want to have some more specific accounts, you could set up some override accounts in a couple of places. One of them is under the currencies, the currency revaluation account. And that's it. With the current functionality, you cannot control anything about the source module. And that's a question I've had so many times that I like to post into different accounts depending on if this was from accounts payable, accounts receivable, and recently then, when it became possible, from the cash and bank management as well. So what we could do in the cash management when we do the foreign currency revaluation, we could do it across multiple legal entities, we can do it across multiple bank accounts, we can have a preview before posting. Looks like this when we have a look at that. And the preview is the thing hopefully being added also to accounts payable and accounts receivable soon. First place it was added was in the general ledger. And before we didn't even have a simulation in general ledger. Now we have a preview, which is much better. Preview available in cash and bank management, not in accounts payable and accounts receivable. Now, in feature management, you know the workspace where you at least can get an overview of new things, which is now available, maybe didn't switch it on or whatever. One of my go-to places whenever I have a look at the new version of Dynamics 365, because even though I read all the notes and so on, it's not always that everything is mentioned. And even if I read the notes, maybe I didn't understand it. And the feature management is then the second favorite that I have among the workspaces, and go through that and see the functionality. And normally it's easy to get some help. You just have a look at the feature, you click, and then you get to learn or docs or whatever it is, and then you'll find more information about that. But the thing I want to mention to you right now is there is a feature in feature management which is about performance improvement. For some reason, it is under cash and bank management, but it affects accounts payable, accounts receivable. I don't get that, but that's where you'll find it. And since I'm a bit confused, I would think everybody is, as always, let me just show where it is in the feature management. So just tracking this across again, having a look at my second favorite up here and get to my feature management, and then have a look at, I don't know how you search for things over here, but if you now had a look in accounts payable and accounts receivable, search through the modules for accounts payable, accounts receivable, you wouldn't find this feature because for some reason it is under cash and bank management. Get that, but anyway, let's see, reval thing. Sometimes I really can't find things in it because I search for the wrong things, so less is more, I guess. So the foreign currency revaluation performance improvements is in cash and bank management. And then if you happen to read the description, which I actually do once in a while, you can see this is about accounts payable, accounts receivable. Split it into smaller batches and then help to reduce. I don't know if you ever came across that, but if you do, it's extremely frustrating in here. And this helps to put it into smaller chunks. As always, no matter what kind of thing it is, smaller chunks. Well, if you got out of memory things, it helps. This, why isn't this on per being mandatory kind of thing in it? I don't know, but you need to know it's in here at least. Good thing it is, but cash and bank mentioned. Anyway, here it is. Now that was one thing, and I got more things about currency revaluation because for a lot of people in this, and a lot of people with some of the other ones in here, this is time consuming and a bit frustrating as well. Yeah, I just saw something in the chat about frustration as well. Let me get back to questions and frustrations and comments later on, see if I can address any of those. No guarantee though. This was one. Be careful about this, and let me just move my Dynamics 365 out of the way and move on into my slides. So notes in here, HOPS, AP, and AR. That's nice. Why not put it over here? Maybe because it has to be put into two places in that. Now, news from the next version. Didn't make a lot of time for this, but anyway, you need to know it's in here. I just give you a heads up of this. I've been waiting for this for a very long time. And that's the reason why I want to mention that. In a shared setup, and this is set up in general ledger under currencies and currency revaluation posting profile. We do that for general ledger, accounts payable, accounts receivable, and for the bank. There are different things depending on where you are. If in general ledger, you can't do anything but realized gain or loss. If you're in accounts payable, accounts receivable, and bank, you could do other things as well. But basically, what's coming with this in a month, I guess it's going to be public. Then you could set up to post on a module level or on a more granular level to different accounts than the ones you have in ledger or in the currency accounts. So you could set this up to define, so you do it per currency, per module, or even more granular with the hierarchy style that we have, for most posting profiles and accounts payable, accounts receivable. We got the, whether you like it, table for single, and then group or all. And that's not coming to the posting profile of currency revaluation. I like that. And it's about time they will have things like that. Let's then hope that we'll see more posting profiles. Cash bank management, that's one that I think about all the time. Why don't we have posting profiles in there? But now we got it with this. And that's some of the things I really like, the improvements that we have in Dynamics 365. It's not all for the sales room, right? It's not all about pre-sales. Just make it more useful. I really like that when this happens. More of that, please, Microsoft. And also, you guys, more of the main account category. If we have ever met in a training room or otherwise during lunch or whatever, I probably talked about main account category. A lot of people, they leave that blank on main accounts. Don't, please. It's been used in so many places. Maybe you noticed in the trial balance, main account category is not an optional column in there. So you could do subtotals per main account category with using the advanced grid functionality that we now have. So main account category for this, for controlling if you select the right main account type, for using on your financial reports, for use on Power BI, and now being used as a group selector in here, because the group on main accounts, what is that? That's the main account category. So if you want to control through the currency revaluation posting profile, a group of main accounts, main account category is your friend. So once again, proves its importance, as I was mentioning, should be mandatory. I know you can set it up to be required, and it looks like mandatory for the users, but still, I think it should be like that out of the box. Main account category, right? This is what it looks like, and it's going to be found covering all four modules under general ledger, and then currencies, currency revaluation posting profile. And I mentioned to you that you can see a small video. I think it's only 5 minutes on YouTube. I mentioned that in a blog post I did on LinkedIn and on AXcademy.com as well. And then you can read the blog post also on LinkedIn about that. That's as much, and I've been able to find that was this, but that's kind of enough. It really looks good. And then the thing about the lowest level of defaults, and we'll get back to that the next time around. Similar thing to what we could do about the image rate posting and so on. So this is really good. Yeah, I mentioned that. So let's just move on. We've got more things to do. Fiscal calendar, ledger calendar, like with other things, terminology is king in here. Fiscal calendar is a global shareable definition of the fiscal years overall, whereas the ledger calendar is when we apply the fiscal calendar to our legal entities in the ledger screen, and then we can control the behavior, the module behavior, or the period behavior by putting on hold or only allow some of our people to post in a given period. That's extremely important when we do the things about the period and the year end, of course. And then remember that you have to create the next fiscal year before we can actually do the year end closing. Now, that was a little bit fast. Moving on to the next slide. I think I just need to track my good old friend Dynamics 365 over here once again, and then have a look at a couple of these things in here. Just pushing myself back to my my dashboard in here, and then navigate to, why not, menu navigation, and navigate to general ledger collapse, because there's so many things in here, and then get to the calendars and the fiscal and the ledger calendar. As you would know, fiscal calendars is that's the global definition that we select for each legal entity inside the ledger screen. We then select the fiscal calendar over here. So the fiscal calendar is global, so it could be selected in multiple legal entities. Not all legal entities, they operate at the same speed. So to have to separate the behavior, we have to separate the control of if you can work in December or not, depending on which legal entity you are in here. So the ledger calendar is the legal entity specific definition of whether the period at all is open for transaction, if some of the modules are open for transactions whatsoever. So once I have in the fiscal calendar definition, I have defined a fiscal calendar called fiscal or Finn or April to March, or whatever I called it, then for a given fiscal year, I can see the periods in here. And each of these periods, they have a different period type. First one up here is opening, you know, the one that we use for transferring closing transactions into the opening period of the next year. You can't do transaction yourself, only the year-end process you could do that. So the other ones over here are the ones where it could be more interesting to have a look at what is the current status of these ones in. It's currently open for some, and then when we get down to the closing period, we can then see that it's currently on hold. Now, the closing period is worth noting. When you create the fiscal calendar, you can have three different period types. We can have the opening, the closing, and then we got the operating, at least one of those. You can only have one opening period. You can have as many operating periods as you got days in the year, and then you can have as many closing periods as you have operating periods in that. Normally you have one created only and at the end of the year, but you can create as many as you'd like to. And sometimes we use that to our advantage. If we do inside Dynamics 365, not everybody does that, but if we inside Dynamics 365, we do the year-end adjustments or the closing adjustments, whatever you call those. And then when we do that, we have to select which of the closing periods we want to do. If there is only one in that fiscal calendar definition for that fiscal year, you don't have to select, it's given automatically in here. Now, one of the things I really like to in here is to be able to do module access level updates on multiple modules at the same time. Unfortunately, that is not possible in standard Dynamics 365. If I want to update the module access, I have to select which of the legal entities it was going to be for, like for these two, and then I select which of the modules I'd like to do. So application module, really serious in here. You can only select one at a time, and then you select like good old user group access or no access whatsoever in here. And then please remember that this is the point of a region. Even if ledger is sort of, you cannot do transactions in here anymore, none of you. If you region the transaction, any of the subledgers, it'll still post through to the final destination being sales tax, being ledger, or whatever it would be in here. Okay, now that was fiscal calendar and the ledger calendars as well. And some of the things I really like about the updates being happening is that now you can apply things to multiple, like you do across multiple legal entities. Just miss the across multiple modules in here. But there are templates coming more and more places. We're going to have a look at that soon in here. So let me just move on the slides in here and get to the real year-end close. The year-end close could be among a purchase order year-end process. Depending on who you are, you like to do some commitment, you like to do some commitment accounting. If you do budget control, for those of you who work with that would know that we do budget control, we do encumbrance. Encumbrance basically means we reserve some money for the purchase orders. And if we've then got the purchase order confirmed in one fiscal year, and we haven't received the goods, we haven't received the invoice yet, then the commitment should be shown in here. And maybe you want to carry forward the reserved amounts to the next year. So it is 2022's budget reservation encumbrance, which is being used when you actually get the invoice in 2023. That's some of the things that we could think about with the purchase order year-end processes in here. The closing period adjustment is it's one of the places, which is kind of like in its original status. That could be a lot of things that could be improved in it. Basically, this is the go-to place if you want to post into the closing period. You cannot do that with journals out of the box. You have to get through the closing period adjustments. And the thing in there is then you post in a journal-like environment, you post into the closing period. And as mentioned, when I had a look at the ledger calendar, if you've got multiple closing periods, you would have to select which of those ones. If you have only one closing period for the period you select to do the closing adjustments, it is given which one it's going to be. So only if you've got multiple, you can do a selection in there. So post in the closing period as per the fiscal calendar, and then depending on what you have in the fiscal calendar, if you've got multiple closing periods, then you would need to select. And by the way, talking about that, sometimes you get a question about what does that mean, copy from last year when you create a new fiscal year. And one of the few things that actually matters when you check the box or not is if you created additional closing periods in a year that you're going to copy, like if I created 2 or 3 closing periods in 22 and now create a new fiscal year for 23, if I copy from previous year, I'll get those 3 closing periods with me into the new fiscal year. If I don't check the box, I'll get the usual one opening, the number of operating periods, and then one closing, just as standard. Now, the year-end close is where you can do templating as well. And let's just have a look at that in Dynamics 365. So just bringing this back to my shared screen, getting back to my dashboard and navigate to General Ledger. Didn't flag this as a favorite. So let me just get to my year-end close procedures over here. Now, there's a lot of things in Dynamics 365 that could be easier. Last week, I attended a conference in Stockholm where there was some mention of some of the participants. They had customers who had more than thousands or several thousands of companies or legal entities. And all the things that could happen to make this easier, handle a lot of legal entities at the same time is appreciated. And actually, this is one of the places where Microsoft sort of finally added some templating kind of thing some time ago. So when we're going to do the year-end close, we can set up that we like to have a template for that. So you run the year-end close, and you can have multiple legal entities being assigned to do it the same way in here when you do the year-end close. And before we do that, of course, you need to set up the template and then define how are things going to happen for these companies that's being a part of this or that or those groups. In all the American companies, they should have the return earnings in these ones, as you might remember, set up in the accounts for automatic transactions. And then what's going to happen, you want to transfer the balance sheet dimensions. I don't know why you would select no, but maybe some of you got some good examples. I will select yes. And then for the rest of the ones, if you want to close against a specific financial dimension, or you just want to knock it off against the original ones. And that's kind of nice. We got the templating in here, and that's saving time. But still, there is quite a lot of things that we would need to do manually. The year-end close in itself, I think, is not the most tricky thing as such. It's all the things that actually leads up to do the year-end closing, and that's why I'm really a big fan of. Why not put it on a list so I don't have to remember that from each and every time? And that was the financial period close. Right. So multiple legal entities on the template, they must use the same fiscal calendar, otherwise it doesn't make sense to dynamics in here. And then talking about the calendars, the ledger calendar and the fiscal calendar. We've been there. One is the definition with the 3 types, and the ledger calendar is the one where we got the 3 staging these days in Dynamics 365, permanently closed, on hold, or open. And then once again, unfortunately, when you create a new fiscal year, all the periods, all the operating periods are created open. That could perhaps be done as on hold, but not out of the box. Got a few more things to have a look at, and that I promised to have a look at questions in here. I can see there's been some activity in the chat, so I don't think I'm going to be able to do them all, but let me give it a shot. So I will skip the consolidation financial reports for today. A lot of people don't really do it inside Dynamics 365 because it is not the finest hour of Dynamics 365. Financial reports, not so bad, but for the consolidation emulations, it's not very flexible from my point of view, at least. Bank reconciliation, now other bits and pieces, and we could then learn some more as well here. Shiny new objects coming around 10.0.32, I mentioned that. The currency revaluation budgeting profile mentioned already. Some other things which are coming is optimization of the year-end close, speeding up things, and also the ledger settlement automation. And that you should read about. It's already documented pretty much in Docs and Plan. And there are some of the things where Microsoft really wants to understand what it means towards the year-end close that we got this ledger settlement automation. But it's not a feature until the next version. So maybe I'll do a catch-up webinar because there's quite some implications with this in here. Okay. So while you're looking at the shiny new objects, let me just go through. Oh, this is a long chat. Thank you very much for that. That's good. Drawback is that looking at the numbers and some good ones I can see in here. Yep. Love to see financial period close. That was not a question. That was a statement, and that's a statement I like, and I certainly agree. The Workspace, you can assign the task to other persons. Yes, you can. Dependencies. Yeah, I agree on that. That if you have dependent tasks, you cannot, as a user, necessarily see. That depends on the thing about if you can see other people's tasks, and that's the reason why it could be better if we had more granularity on the view functionality in that. So I agree that you don't know who to call, right? I want to do my period close, but there's somebody out there, and I don't know what. I have to wait for that. So you have to call a team leader or whatever. That's not perfect true. Maybe a bus button or whatever that could help. Foreign currency revaluation in recurring batch depends. Depends on which one. As far as I just remember right now off the top of my head, general ledger, yes, and in cash and bank management, yes. In accounts payable and accounts receivable, I don't think so because that's the only functionality. Just trying to remember that. Dun, dun, dun. What is the best website to keep up to date with Dynamics 365? Oh, that's tempting, isn't it? So I guess learn docs, AXcademy. That's well, sorry, I couldn't help that. And other questions in here. You review this presentation? Absolutely. You can sign up for newsletters, and I think automatically too you get an email if since you signed up for this webinar, you can watch the replay, and it's going to be under our webinar page, academy.com/webinars, where you can then see the ones that we've already done, and you can also have a heads up for the new ones coming up. Blog post in here, feature management. Sometimes the description is poor. I agree, really, on that, and that's the reason why you have to read in more than one place. Feature management is my go-to place. I read release notes, release waves, I read whatever, and sometimes all of a sudden you get things you didn't even read about, and that's the worst thing about like today. Using a version I haven't used too much, to be honest, so always a little bit, what kind of surprises are we going to have? So I agree with that. Description could be so much better. And that's some of the things, though improving, there's so many low-hanging fruits to Microsoft that could help us a lot without too much investment. I know all the new functionality, great, but some of the things is not too useful. Why not just improve on some of the things which is on the ideas portal? And that's what happened with the currency revaluation portal right here. I really like that. I know it's not huge, but I have so many customers who are asking about that. So don't miss that place. Foreign currency revaluation to feed exchange rates manually instead of the exchange rate types. I'm not sure if I understand the question. If it is like at the time you want to run the foreign currency revaluation, you would key in the exchange rate manual in the revaluation tool. The answer is no. If you want a thing like that, I think you have to do an exchange rate type and key in the exchange rate over there manually for that, and then select that. But basically, the answer I think has to be no. Any plans to have a new webinar or new features? Sign up for our newsletters, please, because yes, we are normally doing these webinars at least twice a year when there is a new release wave on that by popular demand too, of course. If you think it would be a good idea, drop us a note. But the short answer is yes, time, right? But normally when there are new webinars out here, that would be great. Would it be possible to use Teams to get subtitles for French community? Yeah, I'm not going to switch into French. My school French is terrible in that. Subtitling, we're not going to do Teams, but let's see what we can do. I know Alison is working hard with the subtitling. She's a big fan of that too, so it's going to happen sooner or later. Perhaps not during the live webinars, but then under the recorded ones. I can't remember. Webinar Geek, which is starting using this tool, and I think they have kind of a subtitling thing in here. But thank you much, Terry, for your comment on that. We don't want to lose any French viewers whatsoever, so let's see what we can do about that. Yeah. I saw that, Alison, so couldn't help that. I know, I'm a big fan of that. All right, so thank you very much, guys. Time I think is up. Just got one last thing to know about. We got a live online course coming up soon with yours truly as the instructor, and during that I'll be talking even more than I did today. It is case-based training, though, so I'm not talking all the time. But I hope to see some of you guys live online February the 6th with the MB310 exam preparation course. Thank you very much for joining today. I didn't get through all the features that I would like to. That's the usual thing. But there are other webinars coming up. Please sign up for our newsletter, or at least sign up for getting informed about our webinars. This recording is going to be posted soon. And then about all the other questions, I'll see if I can have a look at that and maybe do a blog post on some of these. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much for your good questions. Hope to see you soon. This was Finn from AXcademy out of Copenhagen. Have a great evening.